Welcome, fellow analytics travelers. Today we're going to start a three-part discussion on building career path mapping for compensation professionals that are transitioning into HR analytics. Now, the easiest and most efficient way to map that career path is to ask recruiting or survey companies to provide job descriptions, right? But come on, we're talking analytics. So we're going to be tackling this question by using data and the data analytics process, and perhaps we'll discover some insights along the way. Part one of this discussion will explore building an analytics model framework, which is, of course, highly dependent on the investigation objective. So what's the objective? Can we build a career path that transitions compensation professionals from traditional compensation analysis to higher value HR analytics using a fact-based analysis of data? Okay, so then what's a framework? Well, a framework are all the steps necessary to define the analytics objective and build the right data model to achieve that stated objective. The framework defines both the data and the analytics approach. 60 to 80%, remember those numbers, 60 to 80% of analytics work is building the framework. And so building a framework is critical to the final result. Why? A wrong model usually leads to wrong insights and wrong conclusions. Let's look at a couple of possible model frameworks. Gardner, Burson, and others are using a data analytics maturity model to illustrate the stages for data analytics and assess the adoption of data analytics practices within organizations. So will this model that used currently by HR thought leaders provide sufficient data to project for us a traditional career path? A second model, the four-quadrant model, is used to compare the performance of many company products against two measurement dimensions. The model's been popularized by the Boston Consulting Group, who uses it for strategic product planning. So the question here is, will this model framework, which was developed for marketing and strategic planning, have any applicability in the HR space? The first model framework we'll assess is the data analytics maturity model, which compares the four stages of data analytics based on analysis difficulty and value to the organization. The first stage is descriptive analytics, which are typically routine reporting. This stage looks backward and addresses the what happened question. The second stage is diagnostic analytics, which tackles why did it happen and uses visualization and standard regression analysis to identify relationships and correlations between variables. Stage 3 incorporates diagnostic modeling with time series regression analysis to determine causality between variables and assess how those relationships may change over time. Stage 3 addresses the what will happen question. Stage 4 implements predictive analytics with scenario modeling to answer the how can we make it happen question. The maturity model is focused solely on implementation of data analytics. Each stage is sequential, and the model suggests that organization value only increases with analytics complexity. What are the career path implications for the maturity model? Well, the skill to conduct higher level analytics is required at stage 2, very, very early in the maturity model lifecycle. This suggests that only very highly skilled practitioners like, say, data scientists can add organization value across the entire analytics spectrum. So what skills and background do you need to work as a data scientist? Based on hiring specs from Indeed.com, you need a master's degree in technical science. You need lots of experience with commercial grade predictive software and data management tools, lots of experience in data mining and statistical analysis, the ability to visualize data and build complex regression modeling systems, and programming code using Java or Python. Well, that's good too. From a career path perspective, the maturity model suggests that in order to add increasing value to the organization, you need to become a data scientist. And for a compensation professional, that means they must completely transform their current role. That's a pretty big ask. And, not surprisingly, the data doctor disagrees. Adding value through data analytics is less about credentials than about capabilities that are passionately applied. Now let's take a look at the 4-quadrant model framework. This model provides a framework to compare HR activities against 2 measurement dimensions: analytical sophistication and value return to the organization. Think ROI. The 4-quadrant model clusters HR activities based on similar computational complexity and organization return. Now, let's look at the measurement characteristics that make each of these quadrants different, starting with quadrant 1. Quadrant 1 activities require medium to high levels of analytical sophistication, but return only low to medium levels of organization ROI. Examples of HR activities here are focused on pay equity analysis, which can be very challenging when evaluating pay gap drivers. In the current regulatory environment, organization value is limited, but if there are changes in regulatory emphasis, or if management focuses on pay fairness, those activities can push these issues into the Q2 quadrant. Quadrant 2 activities require high levels of analytical sophistication, but they also return high levels of organization value. Examples of Q2 activities focus on optimizing the organization's workforce. Workforce analysis typically requires multiple years of data, regression modeling, time series analysis, and forecasting, all of which require specialized training. Optimizing the workforce to enhance hiring, retention, and utilization of that workforce adds value by reducing long-term labor costs. Quadrant 3 activities require less analytical sophistication, but they also return low to medium organization value. Much of the routine work done in HR and compensation are classified in Q3. The 6 examples are all within the traditional compensation analysis domain. These activities are not complex from an analytical perspective, but it's also difficult to quantify direct organization level value. While these Q3 activities are important, they're not the type of analytics that will trigger a congratulatory invite to the C-suite. Quadrant 4 activities require less analytical sophistication but return medium to high organization value. The 7 examples here represent a mix of HR and workforce activities, including segmenting and differentiating individual and workforce characteristics, plant expansion, planning and facility site selection, and merger acquisition integration. These examples generate higher value returns, but with minimum investment to enhance technical skills. Quadrant 4 represents the low-hanging fruit of HR analytics. This is where you should focus your initial efforts. Bringing the 4 individual quadrants together creates an HR activities value matrix that differentiates based on analysis difficulty and value to the organization. So we've looked at 2 model frameworks. Is one a better foundation for analysis than the other? The maturity model is focused strictly on data analytics and provides limited data to assess career paths. It also suggests that higher organization value is only achievable through higher levels of analytical complexity. Remember the data scientist. The 4-quadrant framework looks at HR activities based on different correlations between complexity and value. It shows that many activities do not require higher levels of analytical complexity, meaning there's lots of high-value work in HR analytics without requiring the skills of a data scientist. The data doctor finds that the 4-quadrant model is a much better framework because it generates a robust data framework that yields initial insights the maturity model cannot provide. The data doctor has used the data analytics approach to build a data foundation for further downstream analysis and hopes that this approach is a useful tool in developing your own frameworks for analysis. In the next blog, we'll use our framework to assess the technical skills necessary to transition into higher value HR analytics.